There are a variety of mediation practice models, and they've evolved over time. And then there's also techniques that mediators use, perhaps independent of their models. My personal view is that the model that one might adopt depends a lot on one's background, and also, importantly, on the available time for the discussions. And so, for example, some of your transformative discussions, which deal with issues of relationship and empowerment, or even facilitative problem solving, take time. I mean, they mean that we need to go through some tough territory and have some very genuine discussions and try to understand what the challenges are and do a best job resolving those things. And it's not necessarily going to happen all at once. It might take 2 or 3 meetings and some measure of stamina to consider those issues. In other contexts, we may have a helper there for a half hour or an hour. And to the extent that we are time limited in our presumed discussion, you're going to find that mediator being much more willing to guess the people's solution, which is very efficient and very economic, or very willing to evaluate perhaps what their solution should be. So I think what you find is that as we provide requirements for people to mediate, but we continue to under-resource the effort and in fact start constraining the time and say, you know, it's not even 2 hours anymore, we're asking you to reach agreement in an hour, that we're going to find the mediators are going to tend to be much more assertive and powerful in the mediation environment. What I would say is, like most phenomenon that are good phenomenon, they start out in a purer state, and that those who have the creative juices flowing and really the great passion attract others who are looking for these services, and great things happen and people get excited. And somehow, however, when we say that wonderful thing is so wonderful that we now should require it of people, and we start creating rules about that as to who can provide these services and where, and who will pay for them, and how do we know people have satisfied these requirements, that somehow we tend to take our focus off what's perhaps most important, which is giving people the support for having really difficult discussions at important times. So what I'm finding is that as mediation is being more incorporated into the courts, into the agencies, with nothing but good intent, by trying to foster valuable discussions, that we are sometimes not giving people sufficient time, not putting them in an inspiring location that will support them being at their best, oftentimes putting other pressures on them, financial or otherwise, that motivate them to not necessarily have the best experience. And in the process, the very meaning of mediation is now at risk. Is it a process in which people have the opportunity to really capably problem solve for the future, or is it a hoop that we jump through, you know, on our way to our next due process hearing? So these are some of the challenges that we face. Well, mediation is everywhere, and it's in every substantive area, and there are multiple delivery systems. There are private sector delivery systems, there are community delivery systems, there are public sector, court and agency delivery systems, and there are a number of processes that are perhaps called mediation, but really are kind of different flavors. So what I've seen, if nothing else, is a diversification and to some extent a maturation of the marketplace. I do believe that ultimately consumers, both in the private sector and as voters, will ultimately make the selection of what are the approaches and that they like, that they prefer. The professionals may have ideas about these things, but ultimately the consumers will decide. And I think they like mediation. The reason they like mediation is it's the one process that lets them stay in control. They shouldn't have any penalties if they don't agree. And it's the one process that aspires to reaching best solutions rather than just some solution. And but to keep that best problem solving aspect of mediation alive, mediators need to do it. It really is the one thing that we can uniquely offer. People will not maximize on their own. If they're in a difficult spot, they will not self-maximize. And adjudication and arbitration have nothing to do with maximized problem solving. They're just figuring out a winner and a loser. So if there's going to be maximized problem solving and it's going to be supported by professional efforts, mediation, that's its strongest aspect. And I think that if we keep our eye on that prize, that we'll do well. But if we just become a functionary for the courts, we're at risk. Well, Mediate.com is a bridge between the mediation profession and the consuming public or publics. And like many .coms, it's actually a fairly international effort. We're now finding about a quarter of our traffic beyond North America, and almost a quarter of our sales are now international as well. What we have tried to do is to educate professionals and help them educate one another, as well as educate the public, both end users as well as referral sources. And it's the quality of our content, now over 5,000 articles and over 300 hours of videotape, that acts as a magnet so that we end up having meaningful traffic. We have an average of about 17,000 visitors a day who come for approximately 12 minutes per visit, and they look at a variety of resources. And in the process, we hope that they'll also run across our mediators who are in our directory. We also provide for website technology for mediators and organizations and other ADR professionals, and the most visited directory online. And so we do our best to connect professional mediators and other ADR professionals with both the end-using public as well as with referral sources. We now offer a free membership to anyone who wants access to all of our written content, and for people that want a directory listing, and then we send them our newsletter, our weekly newsletter as well. For people who want a larger listing, a full-page directory listing with picture and links and the like, that would be the premium membership. And for people that want comprehensive website services, we've got a nice, easy-to-use website package, and we do domain hosting and the like. And then for a limited number of professionals, we make them super visible, so we give them featured visibility either in their area code or in their state, so that every person who comes from their geographic area has a very high probability of seeing them. Being a mediator is a very attractive thing, at least conceptually, for many professionals, especially for experienced lawyers who are looking to atone for some of their sins, I think. But it is truly a valuable service. It becomes over time an art form. It is as much about how people work and make decisions and communicate and think and problem solve as it is about any legal aspect. It calls for the best of you. It calls for all of you. You need to use your smarts, but you also need to use your intuition. It's as much about how people operate and make decisions as it is about your knowledge of the law, for example.